Namaste. Welcome, everybody. Are we ready with online transmission as well? Yes? Let's start with a consecration. Please close your eyes. Keep your back straight. Relaxation. We bring the awareness in the middle of the chest, a little to the right. One finger width to the right. The feeling of intimacy. The reconnection with the depth of our being. We consecrate to God the spiritual heart, of which Shambhala is an archetypal expression, the fruits of this satsang. Gently open the eyes. Keeping the purity of our intention, sending blessings, compassion for the world, for Mother Earth. We will continue to speak about Shambhala, the divine realm that inspires us. I remind you that Shambhala etymologically means the land held by Shiva, also the land or that which brings happiness or peace. Last satsang, we spoke about Puri Ashtaka, about the city of 8, as a reflection of that geography of Shambhala, those 8 regions of the kingdom of Shambhala, which are reflected in our heart as expressions of different dimensions of our consciousness. And there was also last satsang that meeting, that account of the meeting of Thomas Andrew with Tibetan Lama, who revealed him near the statue of Tara, the condition of the earth, and that message of the heart that should be now brought in the world. Today we will continue to speak about how our consciousness manifests at this level and how we can purify, and what is the role of this aspiration towards Shambhala, and how this Puri Ashtaka, how this 8 dimensions of consciousness represent an essential aspect in this. And also I would love to bring another beautiful confession now from another book of Osendowski about the King of the World, another very, very inspiring confession. So about the Shambhala, we will have now some pictures as well from a friend of mine. He wasn't yet in Shambhala, but quite close, as you can see. And you remember we spoke about the 8 regions, the 2 circles of mountains, which should be reflected in our heart. We spoke about Shambhala in the form of an 8-petal lotus, which is the mandala of our heart. We spoke about the city of 8, this Puri Ashtaka, which contains the 5 tanmatras, or the energies of the senses. It's much more than this. It's the energy is somehow related to the first 5 chakras, we can say. No, the earth, water, fire, and so on, plus manas, the mind, the lower mind, the memory, sensorial mind, the intellect, and the ego. This creates like the inner world. We spoke about this quite a lot last time. And we have this representation of Hrid Chakra, that secondary secret chakra with 8 petals, with the 8 paranormal powers associated with this wish-fulfilling tree, as is an attribute of the king of the world. So these 8 kinds of consciousness, this Puri Ashtaka, the Tibetan Buddhist says, gives rise to illusion and ignorance normally. So we are living in this cage of personal aspects, but as we evolve, it's a purification of it. So we start rediscovering what would represent this archetypal city or place of Shambhala, and then they reveal themselves, these levels or this race of consciousness, as manifestations of the enlightened wisdom or awareness of a Buddha, or this radiance of the spiritual heart, we can say, or dimensions, essential dimensions of the spiritual heart. Actually, the Shambhala Yantra is, I would say, as I mentioned a little bit, representation of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, which are celestial Buddhas, which each of them sublimate some lower tendencies like jealousy, pride, and so on in high divine qualities. So it's exactly the same process of transformation, what is a chaotic existence in an order. Mandala is ordering. So meditating on a mandala is like coming in tune with the cosmos, which etymologically means order. No? So meditating on a mandala is like managing to purify and to transform, to sublimate limiting energies, to open to these cosmic capacities, or to open to cosmic dimensions. And we will start with an invocation of Shambhala that reflects this inner geography of Kamtrul Rinpoche, which is a part of the Jonang Shambhala tradition. Om Ah Hum Ho. Subtle and secret is the pure and hidden realm of Shambhala in the shape of an 8-petal lotus, surrounded in all directions by a boundary of snow mountains. Everywhere there are rivers, lakes, forests, and flowers. Their exquisite beauty reveals the glory of the God realms. In each of the petals, there are 12 kingdoms, in each kingdom 10 million cities. The excellent and sublime realm of mantra, this noble land, is guarded by the enlightened minds of the Kalki kings. There are 25 such traditional Shambhala kings. At its center is Mount Kailasha, the very symbolic expression of the spiritual heart, on which sits the capital of Shambhala, Kalapa. Between lotus-filled lakes, within marvelous pleasure groves, lies the wondrous mandala of Kala Chakra. May I be blessed to be born in this perfect realm. That sublime realm, without enemies or contagious diseases, free from disputes, sorrow, suffering, or terror, without prejudice between high and low, rich and poor, where everyone practices the authentic teachings, especially the secret mantra of Kala Chakra. The king of the Tantra, of Tantras, dispelling all outer, inner, and secret obstacles. This practice naturally flows from the sacred Dharma. May I perfectly experience this pure realm within a single lifetime, attaining perfect Buddhahood. May I be able to emanate forms for the benefit of and happiness of all beings without exception. By the truth of the primordially pure nature of phenomena and the accumulated virtues of a pure and superior intention, may quickly achieve everything in accordance with this aspiration. So this is an invocation done by Kamtrul Rinpoche. He is one of the few who dedicated all their life and practice to this revelation of Shambhala. He had some visions of Shambhala, profound meetings with deities and realities from Shambhala. He is an adept of this Jonang Shambhala tradition. We'll not go now into many details of this Jonang tradition. It's one of a less known group of or sect of Buddhism, apart from the traditional Gelugpa Kagyu. This Jonang is, I would say, the most close to the Shaivist, Kashmir Shaivist tradition. So their texts try to make a conciliation between the background of spanda, the sacred tremor of the heart, background of consciousness, and the doctrine of emptiness which Buddha brought. This is the reason for which in some period in the history of Tibet, their writings were considered forbidden, and so they had some issues. But now this is, and according to Kamtrul Rinpoche, is the most pure tradition of Shambhala. Of course, we can go beyond any such separation and look at the archetypal meaning of Shambhala, which goes beyond just the context of Kala Chakra or of that tantric tradition. But I mentioned about Khentrul Rinpoche because he said, he's the one who said that Shambhala is not merely a realm where one hopes to reborn in the future. This is still possible, but the main focus is on understanding how Shambhala manifests within the stream of our own experience right now in the present moment. So he said the Shambhala is the result of spiritual practice. Therefore, understanding Shambhala is an important method for focusing our intention and invigorating our spiritual development. So once again, how Shambhala manifests within the stream of our own experience right now in the present moment. And this refers again and again to the way in which we perceive reality. Before going further, he understood the need of this purification of the heart. And Kamtrul Rinpoche, in the development that is happening now in this movement of openness towards Shambhala, has, I would say, quite similar aspiration that we can find in Hridaya. They want to create a global community of Shambhala Tantra practitioners, because he said the golden age will not occur as a result of a single event, but as a cumulative effect of combined efforts of people on this planet, as we also said. And first, we as individuals need to learn to cultivate peace, harmony, wisdom within our hearts, our minds, in order to radiate that in the world. And that's why he recommended to build up spiritual communities that promote the cultivation of such qualities. And through their shared practice of meditation, these communities will form a global network of practitioners dedicated to the actualization of their enlightened nature. So, to the revelation of the spiritual heart. So this is, I feel, an inspiration coming from Shambhala, and with this we resonate deeply. And the last component for actualization of such a new time is to create a physical infrastructure required to support, long-term retreats in conditions conducive to meditation. So exactly as we just intend to create even more such places for allowing long-term retreats. And then the motivation which needs to be developed is the motivation to achieve revelation of our ultimate nature, of the spiritual heart. And also the emphasis is placed on removing the causes that mask our nature, that not allow this purity of the heart to be revealed. So that's why meditative techniques and also physical techniques, Hatha Yoga, bring a complete transformation of how a practitioner experiences reality. So we come again how Shambhala manifests now. We have in the Oriental tradition, especially in the Tibetan Tantric tradition, especially in Vajrayana, many practices of visualizations in which, for example, the body is visualized as having 100 deities. So you literally visualize. In Kala Chakra, sometimes it's said that there are 1,000 deities, which cannot be visualized by themselves, but you are breathing. It's 1,000 as a sense of infinity, as an expression of this inconceivable reality that transcends our mental, normal, rational understanding. And then we are just inhaling, absorbing mandala in our being. And it's like this whole world becomes a world, a sacred world. Actually, we mentioned about Chakra, the tantric tradition, is about learning to see the sacredness of the world, of existence, the sacredness of time, and the sacredness of space as well. So the body starts being perceived as inhabited by these deities, literally. For example, in Vajrayana, the masters would say no surgery should be done unless it's for the purpose of the Dharma, so which will lead us to a healthy or supportive, but otherwise anything that will damage the body is like damages these deities. So the body is precious, but even more than this is a spiritual way of seeing. In connection with this, we have, and last satsang we already spoke about this Puryashtaka, the city of eight, how we live like in a cage created by our projections, fears, tendencies, which are corresponding with these 8 aspects of consciousness. We are creating such visualizations, the way in which we are seeing ourselves, the world. That's why we can refer to conscious versus unconscious visualizations. So this visualization, for example, of the deities in the body, or the visualization of the Shambhala in our being, and ourselves as living in a world as Shambhala, and the whole world as being Shambhala, would be a conscious spiritual visualization. And this differs to what is happening now with in common state of consciousness, where people are doing visualizations that are unconscious, visualizations that are limiting ourselves, that we are just a physical body. In a similar way, the yogis are doing consciously a freeing visualization, and they visualize themselves as having Shambhala in their heart, living in a world of deities, and seeing themselves as the main deity of that world, the central deity. So the process is somehow similar in the common mentality, except that the deities people use are their own ego's expressions. Anger, fear are, we can say, like demonic deities or entities that we just reinforce through our thoughts. In a conscious visualization, ultimately, everything is dissolved in the pure light of awareness. So all these are definitely relative expressions, and in the end, they are a support for uplifting our soul, for purifying all this, the lotus of our heart. And then in the end, everything dissolves in the light of the spiritual heart. As Ramana said, worshipping the formless reality by unthought thought is the best kind of worship. So, an openness to that pure awareness, to the revelation of the spiritual heart. So, once again, why do we do such visualization? The key is this Puryashtaka. This world, we name it real. What exactly is this world? Well, if some may say this is just an illusion in the sense that doesn't exist, the Tantric tradition will never say so. But still, the Vajrayana tradition, as Shaivism as well, looked at this world and understood that the way in which we perceive this world depends very much on our level of consciousness, basically depends on this filter, manas, no, the sensorial mind, the intellect, the ego, and then all these energies related to the elements, earth, water, fire, related to perceptions. And these are the tanmatras which contribute to our perception, which means this is the world. And we see and we say this is real. But how a fish would see this world? This world will be seen differently by a fish. What is the difference between a human being and a fish? Is this Puryashtaka, we can say. There, for example, for a fish, the element water is more predominant, while for a human being who is more grounded in the earth, it's the earth element. For a bird is more air element, at least in some aspects of that consciousness. Also, we may take some substances and then the perception of the world becomes different. No? And then we may say we changed just the chemistry of the brain, no more DMT or so, and then the world will be different. Then how and what is this world? More than this, the Buddhist tradition says that the fact that we experience the world as human beings now is just the result of a common karma. We agree that this is real, but it's just the consequence of a spectrum. And then there are other levels of existence, this, according to that so-called Bhava Chakra, another 5 levels apart from the kingdom of human beings, animals, demons, gods, and so on, which are all relative, and all are perceiving according to their Puryashtaka. Now, a way of understanding this would be referring to the 3 bodies. There are the 3 bodies of the Buddha, a way of purifying our whole structures would be to refer to the 3 bodies of a Buddha, the Dharmakaya, Shambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya, the causal, astral, and the physical body of a Buddha. According to the Zen, because this Trikaya doctrine is quite general, it's not only to Vajrayana tradition, according to a Zen comparison, which I find very beautiful, they say Dharmakaya can be compared to the whole corpus of medical knowledge, so it's like the whole knowledge, Then Shambhala is the education of the doctor through which he gains this knowledge. So that is our particular understanding. And then Nirmanakaya is the application of this knowledge in treating patients who, through it, are changed from sick to healthy persons. Yes. In the same way, we can understand not only related to the medical realm, but in connection with everything. Through Nirmanakaya, we apply the wisdom. Shambhogakaya is, we can say, our vision, our understanding. And this Dharmakaya is a causal, wider reality. To put it in a more, I would say, more profane example, but maybe quite helpful, we can say, for example, we would receive TV reception, which, as human beings, have an antenna to receive TV programs. The problem is that we can receive only some limited amount of TV programs. So Dharmakaya would be like the TV provider. Then Shambhogakaya is the object of the contract with the TV provider. So the limitations, just one broadcast, no? Exactly. For example, the human realms. You receive the human realms, no? And then the Nirmanakaya is like the TV set. You are functioning and expressing, but it's actually what is happening through that filter of Shambhogakaya, which is very much reflected in this Puriyashtaka, in this mind, body, intellect, body, intellect, ego, and therefore purifying this allows us, or having visions about Shambhala allows us to open to spiritual dimensions. So it's about changing the system of perception. So that's why it's important to understand how we and should open to such visions, to such new understanding, how some people can have visions, and what exactly it is happening, and what is the difference between just wishful imagination and such an inspiration that comes to a prophet or to a spiritual being. During this satsang, I'm going to explain this, and also what is happening in Bardo when there is the possibility to be drawn to one or another of these tendencies. Following the same symbolic perception of Shambhala, we find in many traditional texts of Kala Chakra about the fight between the barbarians, the people outside of Shambhala, and the realm of Shambhala. When the time of degeneration, it says, there are even prophecies about this, the barbarians would come, and then the king of the world and the realm of Shambhala will start radiating, and the golden age will be revealed. So we can say outer barbarians, and then it's corresponding this inner barbarians in connection with outer Kala Chakra and inner Kala Chakra, the external geography and internal geography. So depending on which region he inhabits and what rank he holds, each citizen of Shambhala embodies a level of consciousness. So not all are realized beings, but it's according to these, parts of or petals of this Shambhala, there is a particular kind or level of consciousness. But unlike those who live outside of this realm of Shambhala, such as the barbarians who will try to conquer it, all the inhabitants of Shambhala acknowledge the king. Acknowledge the king as their ruler and act according to his command. This is a metaphor of the spiritual heart. So even though it's not yet the perfection there everything is in order because it's that spiritual authority of the heart. This refers to different energies and expressions of consciousness. So the essential feature that distinguishes the level of consciousness associated with Shambhala is that only such inhabitants, that means the inner energies in direct connection with the heart, possess an awareness deep enough and clear enough to recognize and notice the impetus of the heart. That innermost calling, to really to have that transparency to understand what the heart is telling us. When they awaken in us, so these expressions of consciousness, when they awaken in us, they automatically shift the obedience from the ego consciousness, to this, with all the moods, I like this, I don't like that, to that calling of the heart. So how this sublimation is happening? How to open to this more reliable, deeper source of our being. The inner barbarians refer to our poisoned states of mind, while the outer barbarians refer to inhabitants of those places where conflicts are born very much out of these poisonous minds, and where these tendencies became widespread. So it's just the decadence of Kali Yuga, when a lot of people are just thinking and acting in that tendency of decadence. So much of the imbalance and destruction experienced in our outer world is, the Shambhala teachings says, the manifestation of the imbalances and disturbances of sentient beings' inner elements. These tendencies, mind, sensorial mind, intellect, ego, all this, when they are not listening to the heart. We have this inner outer correspondence principle in the tantric practice. There is always this principle between the correspondence between the microcosm and macrocosm. To find the balance and harmony of the outer elements, and in the Shambhala teachings is even said, for there not to be earthquakes or floods or fires or violent storms, windstorms, and so on, it is very much important to recreate the balance and harmony in our inner elements. So purifying sentient beings internally is the key to establish an outer balance. See, even at the natural level of the natural forces, not only wars or things like this. Therefore, when we purify our inner domain, the outer one will be also purified and brought into balance. That's why our efforts to bring about this balance should take place in the spirit of harmony. And this is important, even though such metaphors appear like a fight between the barbarians and the people in Shambhala. Nevertheless, always this is the spirit, the true spirit behind any spiritual teachings, and in general, and of the Shambhala Tantra in particular. Everything is happening in the spirit of harmony, not through aggression, not fighting somebody, but bringing more this self-awareness. This is the way in which we fight the aggressions. Now, an interesting example, just to see the way in which these people who are dedicated to such practices are operating. I'll give you the story of Rinpoche, Venerable Rinpoche, Kirti Tsenchab Rinpoche. He traveled to Antarctica to release blessed water from many water bodies worldwide into the ocean currents to adjust, balance the fragile environment of the polar caps and to pacify extreme weather patterns. This is a Tulku, who is a being, a bodhisattva who had intense practice. He was born in the Tibet in 1926. He in the Free Tibet, and then when he came to Dharamsala in 1959, he did a 15 years retreat, and then he felt like going and purifying, the planet in this way, meditating and charging with this. Maybe you heard about the studies of Masaru Emoto about hidden messages in water and all that the water can carry spiritual energies or purity. Now we are going to speak about something that is, I would say, quite profound, related to this Shambhala as an inner mirror, and how Shambhala can be seen such an inner mirror. As this inner realm, Shambhala is not just a perfect world, but has this perfect quality of reflection, of revealing the Supreme Self. For example, in Christianity, Saint Francis of Assisi was named the mirror of Christ. The mirror of Christ. So think about Saint Francis of Assisi, no? He was a mirror of Christ. Shambhala is like a mirror of the divine. And then we create in our heart consciously, or we open to such model. In Shambhala as an inner realm, as the dimension of our being, is like the meeting place or the focal point where there is the pure awareness, which in itself is all knowledge or pure light. So Shambhala is not just an imaginative creation. Shambhala is that consciousness, is God. So once again, it's not just a shell, a created thing. Is that full consciousness, is having God, is having it's charged with that supreme meaning. And on the other hand, we have the mirror of the soul. In this way, it is like in our soul shines reflected a perfect world of bodhisattvas, compassion and love. It is an inner guide, like an innate guru that doesn't need to give particular instructions, but just allow human consciousness to see from inside the world in a more coherent and spiritual, meaningful way. So it's like that chaotic Puryashtaka becomes harmonious, like this world of our being becomes like a mandala in such harmony that automatically we don't need the instruction of somebody. Naturally, we are acting with wisdom. So Shambhala, once again, is like the meeting point of consciousness and this reflection of a perfect world in our soul. So the human consciousness starts to see in a more meaningful, coherent way. We start seeing the world in a different way. We said that we can see the world in so many ways. Yes, the birds would see in a way, the fish in a way, the human beings, but not all human beings see in the same way. Bodhisattvas would see in a different way. Ramana is seeing in a different way, was seeing the world in a different way. Why? Because of that purity of the heart. And Shambhala is exactly this imprint that can create this purity of the heart. So Shambhala is a perfect mirror, conscious mirror, divine mirror. It's creating this reflection. It's a mystery of this reflection of reality. It's a reflection of the reality of nirvana in the mirror of illusion, samsara, the phenomenal world. So it's a reflection. This is happening anyhow, but we are not conscious about it. No? The nirvana, the God, the present moment is reflected. But then acknowledging Shambhala is like we discover the mystery of this reflection. So just to clarify how the eternal moment, this means how the eternal present moment, so the real now, is reflected in the mirror of this present event of what is happening now, the circumstances of this evening. So we are here, yes, we are here, we are speaking different things, thoughts, and so on. This is samsara, the phenomenal world. But at the same time, there is the present moment. And the openness to Shambhala is like we start seeing this coherence. Is the present moment and what is happening at the same time with no struggle and no tension between them. So in this subtle image, we see that there are two elements, the mirror itself and the observing subject. That means this witness consciousness who sees his own image reflected in the mirror as object. So Shambhala is the linking factor in the process of reflection and recognition of the reflection. Who am I? This who am I, in this case, is not just a transcendental self, but is that present moment that doesn't deny anything, includes the reflection itself. What is God? Yes, it's not a transcendental self. It is right here, right now. It is this reflection, but it would be a limitation to say, or an ignorance to say it's just what is happening. It's at the same time the consciousness that present moment and all that is in this magic of a reflection or integration. And this is what Shambhala is, a perfect mirror. It's about how we learn to become a perfect mirror. How we will reflect then not just the world as human beings or as fish or as people who are high because they took this or that substance, but as a transparent consciousness. And Shambhala is like an archetypal mirror of this case. So Shambhala is the symbol of both the mirror, like the yantra and mandala, and the observing conscious subject, the witness. So Shambhala, again, it's not just an image or it's what we are. It's that is the divine. As archetypal mirror in our soul, Shambhala is an expression of the perfect openness and reflection of the cosmos. So when we are able to live in that open attention with no fear, that naturalness is exactly, we would say, Shambhala is a concretization, a materialization of that sense of openness. We will clarify more and more, I hope, this. So as the observing subject, as the observing me, Shambhala is the spiritual heart, the witness consciousness, God himself. So at the core, in the middle of Shambhala, is the king of the world. No? It's a little bit challenging because we are speaking about a world and we are referring to ourselves. But this challenge is good to take because it's good to identify ourselves not anymore just with a person, but with such an archetypal world. Of course, there are physical mirrors limitations. If we look, and especially in the traditional way in which a mirror was seen as just a metal surface which reflects something, a mirror gets rusty. So in ancient times, these mirrors were highly polished surfaces of metal, and they had to be kept polished like this in order to preserve this reflection capacity. In a similar way, Shambhala should be kept alive in our soul. It should not become just a concept or ensemble of theories, but the perfect clarity of no ego. So this is the Bodhisattva spirit, this longing for helping others, this aspiration is Shambhala is the very concretization of all this purity of our soul, of all these noble qualities. In this way, as long as we keep that, non-ego, that, it's a way of purifying the Puriyashtaka, is still not the absolute self, but still this is how we purify our soul, no? So, like old mirror, such a surface is always in danger to be distorted, deterioration. So, as long as the mirror is perfectly polished and flat, the observing subject, the spiritual heart, can see what? I see my own reality in that the world is not separate from me. Again, we tend to discuss in this duality, but as long as there is just transparency here. God sees itself as itself. Doesn't matter that there are objects. Phenomenologically, yes, there are different things, but unifying is this present moment, or that sacredness of being. And then the world of objects is not duality. Duality would be only when we create psychologically this. Otherwise, it's just the present moment. And then I reflect myself. So such a perfect, polished, and flat, clean mirror is one in which the subject, the witness consciousness, the spiritual heart, can see itself, its own reality, and any pure form or energy. So there radiates naturally compassion, love, generosity. So they are perfectly reflected on such surface of our soul, which, taking the model of Shambhala, is like a perfect mirror. In this case, the otherness of the mirror, we said the otherness of the mirror itself, is the ego. As long as the mirror is completely polished, is just transparency, is nothing, no? But when that comes, it's an otherness, it's me, no? It's like saying, Hafez, get out of the way, no? I come with my personality. That mirror starts being not non-transparent. And then, the personal imperfections and distortions caused by fears, desires, needs, likes, dislikes, all the samskaras, vasanas, all these subconscious tendencies, the compulsions they create, which are all like waves, imperfections of the mirror. And when this otherness of the mirror is reduced to a minimum or even effaced completely, then we have just God seeing itself as itself. So what remains is just consciousness seeing itself in a perfect cosmic mirror. We can become such a cosmic mirror when the personal impurities are cleansed, and Shambhala is like a new imprint, an archetypal perfect mirror. So Puryashtaka, with these energies, we see in a purified way, we taste in a purified way, we touch, we think in a purified way. All this is Puryashtaka. So all that filter which brought karmically us in this realm of human beings, which has a huge potentiality compared to other realms. The Tibetan Buddhists emphasize this because here it's that precious human incarnation, because here we can have these possibilities to shift, to transform, not to be just identified with the limiting ego consciousness. Of course, if the mirror reflects a dull or distorted image, it manifests its own otherness, distinctiveness, and so we start with this sense of alienation from ourselves and the world. And this is happening because there is no transparency between ourselves and the world. We don't have that between ourselves and the spiritual heart. So the creative power of the spirit and its reflected image in the soul, which means the divine qualities, expressions of love, compassion, wisdom, this bodhicitta, are not obvious there. So the distorted and imperfect image, this common Puryashtaka, the common condition of our limited soul, presents something alien to our pure awareness, the spiritual heart. Appears as something, it's not that intimacy. We feel coming back, like coming back to ourselves. No, otherwise we are not ourselves, because of this otherness of our normal mirror. So the Shambhala model imprinted in our soul, brought by this very self-awareness, provides the power and grace to improve and complete, so to bring to a perfect condition this mirror, so that we might reach a truly perfect self-consciousness. And then we come like Ramana. The experience of the self, he said, is seeing only love, and hearing only love, touching only love, smelling only love, which is bliss. So all the senses are purified in this light of the self. Now, it can be just this pure light of the self, of consciousness, or we can be supported by such a realm as Shambhala, which is like providing us like a support. No? Otherwise, we may just be maybe too abstract. And we will see how this can happen. Also, Shambhala can be seen, therefore, as an alchemical vase. That place for sublimation is the place where our lower emotions, so our limited tendencies, are transformed. It's like the vessel of divine wisdom and compassion, which takes human nature, with its limitations, and sublimates it to harmony in this inner cosmos, remaining in that sense of unity while preserving this sense of unity. Like in spiritual alchemy, it is said that the metals cannot be sublimated, transmuted into gold, normal metals into gold, unless there is the inner gold revealed. So unless the alchemist already purified his being, and then the spirit, the gold of the spirit, is revealed. In the same way, the physical Shambhala cannot be revealed unless this inner Shambhala is revealed. So even though we have this geography about Shambhala, still there were, and even in the first satsang, I presented you some stories that you need to be purified to be able to transcend any limitation in order to assess there. So it's not just a common journey. The purification is a purification, an inner purification. Now, in this way, we start discovering an ocean of meanings. So beneath the surface, so the images of the place and the inhabitants of the Shambhala realms, there lies an ocean of meaning, both subtle and spiritual, that is accessible only to those whose inner eye is open, whether by divine grace or by proper training. It's like a subtle intuition. It's like a calling that is happening. This, this ocean of meaning is not a rational meaning. It's not about understanding in a rational way, and now I know something. As we start seeing a sacred meaning, when, for example, we shift to the awareness, the normal awareness, to the awareness of the now, when we are conscious of the present moment, this now is like we wake up. And that is a new meaning. I used to be just in thoughts, and now I am in a vibrant presence. And that changes the meaning of everything. Who am I? just this self-remembrance, makes everything sacred. That is the meaning that is hidden there. And Shambhala, in a subtle way, is supporting. We said that Tantra is about a support. These divine realities, these beings, these bodhisattvas are supporting from inside. It's like a support from inside, which is happening. We speak about, for example, the Mahamudra, which means the great seal. Seal is mudra. It's like a great seal on this world, on this existence. It's like the seal of awareness. It's the seal of, one taste, as the Buddhists would say, the Zen Buddhists. That one taste is that flavor of oneness, the flavor of eternity in this present moment. And this is the seal. And Shambhala is like a seal in our heart, which starts bringing silently such meanings, working with those longing, with that longing for dropping our selfish tendencies and an aspiration to help other beings, an aspiration to surrender. This is the Mahamudra, the divine seal on everything. We as conscious beings reveal that forgotten seal in and through the mirror of our soul. In and through the mirror of our soul. Otherwise we cannot. We cannot. If we are just lost because of this Puriyashtaka, if our ego is taking us, if our mind, body, intellect goes in dualistic tendencies, we cannot see that. So the texts, the tantric traditional texts, speak about the fact that Shambhala acts as a mirror. So this metaphor of mirror is not something that we are using now. It's Shambhala acts as a mirror to the student, and traditionally it is said that he or she will perceive in it only what her own spiritual state allow her to see. So we see only what our openness allows us to see. In the descriptions, in the texts, the meaning of Shambhala, all that understanding is according to our openness. The more we will open, the more clear this mirror will be, and the more clear will be the way in which we see the whole world. Therefore, the bodhisattvas, or the practitioner who aspires to this state, so for all of us, we learn through the very archetypal model of Shambhala to perfectly combine within herself, in harmony, all the aspects of the cosmos. So this internal objectivity, mind, personality, Puriyashtaka, all, and the external objectivity, so this inner world and the external world, which lead to the realization of the oneness of being. What this oneness of being is, again, oneness of being is what is happening now, right now. So what is this oneness of being? Is that who is at the same time the light of self-awareness, so the witness consciousness, or the eye by which the divine subject sees himself, and the perfectly polished mirror that perfectly reflects the divine light. This would be the oneness of being. So once again, this witness, that spiritual heart in its purity, in that transcendental reality, and that capacity of seeing, that capacity of our soul of seeing in a perfect way with no impurity. No? This domain of our soul in which there is no ego story anymore and remains just still we see the fact that we purified this is not that we cannot see, we cannot speak, we cannot act. No? So still, it is indeed ultimately the witness consciousness, the spiritual heart, but it manifests. Through what it manifests? Usually we consider that this has to manifest through this ego mind. Any action is a ego-based action. No. It's not needed. Any act of seeing needs to pass through an ego story. This is only because of the impurity of this mirror. But Shambhala is helping us to see in a pure way, so that pure awareness of consciousness then starts manifested and expressing the world in a perfect way. Yes? So we can say that Shambhala is that purified heart which contains all things, the cosmos essentially, and in which the reality eternally rediscovers its wholeness. Somehow, this is what we are doing, for example, in the practice of evocation of the day while asking the question, who am I? No? We evoke the day, but then constantly with every event, we drop that old perspective and come with that wisdom. We detach from that personal and we come. But it's just this, reflection in the end of the day when we come and ask in this way. With Shambhala is something similar because we charge the external objectivity and we change it in an interiority in a gradual manner. So first we think that there are people outside, that is the world outside, is not me, I am just the body, and so on. But I learned that it is reflected in my inner world. So Shambhala is this inner objectivity, which ultimately, so inner objectivity, that means I close my eyes and I start seeing, for example, in the yoga of dream, the Tibetan, the Vajrayana tradition of the yoga of dream, they would visualize, even when they wake up, that this is a world of deities. So I start visualizing and I start seeing the world of the perfect world. So I visualize a perfect world, this world as a perfect world. But in this way, it's not so much about the external or just a projection of imagination, is a way of learning how to purify this capacity of seeing. So in these practices, which are like traditional tantric practices, they will train to see the world. It's like now I close my eyes and I see that all of you are divine beings, and we are living in a world full of love, and a world full of compassion and truth. So in this way, we charge or change this inner objectivity. So when I close my eyes, I just see different people struggle and so on. Now I start seeing more and more that intimacy, and then a perfect world, a more coherent world, and then I am. Who am I? In the end, it's again the question, this essential question. Who am I? No? In Shambhala Tantric tradition, we learn through meditation to rediscover this cosmic dimension, which is not related to an anthropomorphic image. That means an image of me. When we look at Krishna, for example, or visualize even, the image of a master, we tend to identify with that. This is an uplifting image. And then we connect. No, I become Krishna or I become Shiva, still in an anthropomorphic image. No, Shiva dancing. I can see myself dancing. But now what do I see? Not a body, but a cosmos. So I see myself, not a body. Why should I see myself just constantly a body? Or if I am not this body, I am, yes, a bigger body or beautiful, more beautiful body, but still a body, a kind of human anthropomorphic form. I start seeing myself a cosmos with goddesses in this cosmic loving awareness mirror. So the Shambhala model and image is teaching us, so revealing in a natural way from inside, when we keep this intimacy with the heart, the consciousness of oneness. Because everything is happening in this perfect reflection in our heart. It is the beginning step towards that sense of non-duality, when we can feel easier than there is Shambhala inside, and then it is outside. So it's this bridge, we can say, to the sense of oneness. So after searching with such intensity to find ourselves in the world, now through Shambhala teachings and wisdom, we discover the world within ourselves. But a world not with fight and alienation, but that world purified through that perfect mirror, or reflected in that perfect mirror of perfect reality. So what would be the role of such mythical stories? They act at the collective subconscious or supraconscious level when, for example, we identify ourselves with the realm of Shambhala, and then we say, so if we meditate, let's consider this, no? We keep in our heart this, the inhabitants of Shambhala keep always the awareness of their heart, no? They are always truthful. They feel always compassion and love for sentient beings, and so on, and so on. So we create such a perfect or an ideal realm. We resonate with such, no, it's a mythical story, or it's like this, but that is a subtle way of inducing the same remembrance. In your heart is a Shambhala in which there are bodhisattvas. That means people, beings, deities who are always thinking about God. So we are living, and it's an aliveness, it's an alive universe that supports. All these deities are supporting this transformation. Even if you are not fully conscious, it's like letting this divine realm to work in that transformation. This is, Tantra. In other means, it's about your work, then it's about some results of the work, but here it's about opening to these cosmic entities, deities, and then they are acting this inhabitants of Shambhala, which are like goddesses, are, constantly awake in your heart, constantly awake. So you see, we have these mythical stories, or let's say stories or legends or reading about Shambhala, and you get uplifted with such affirmations and so on. And then also, Shambhala is helping to acknowledge the consciousness of oneness, because there is the link between that deep realization in meditation, let's say I am Shiva, and that samsaric world of just duality. So I meditate, I am Shiva, but then I open the eyes, and then it's just the world, and it's alien, and it's hard, and so on. Now we come back not to samsara, to just an alien world, but always it's this Shambhala in my heart. It is Shambhala, this sacred, more ordered world, which is inside, it's outside, echoing. So Shambhala, as a reflection of the spiritual heart, is the mirror of the great wisdom, which reflects shape in void and void in shape, the temporal in the timeless, and the finite in the infinite. All that magic, that sense of oneness is happening in our heart. Then we say that a yantra or a mandala is an ordered cosmic system. We know cosmos etymologically means order. And it is coherence per se. So it's that coherence, that harmony. And then through Shambhala, we start seeing it. We start seeing this beauty. So it's an actualization, the crystallization of love that we feel in meditation radiating from the heart. So all that radiating power of the spanda, it's love, or compassion, or joy. Shambhala is like the crystallization of it. Now, I hope it becomes even more clear. And I hope now we start realizing, because it's like referring to a word. It's like that pure word. It's a word of love. I know it. I know in meditation, but it's not just a state that comes and goes and appears only in some very special meditations. I evoke Shambhala because there it's eternally, this essential dimension of existence is eternal present as a perfect mirror. So we can say, is the concretization of truth, purity. Shambhala is the concretization of all this. We have even Ramana said, when somebody asked him, why did the self manifest as this miserable world? A question that legitimate for human being. And Ramana answered to this, in order that you might seek it. To seek the self. Your eyes cannot see themselves, but if you hold a mirror in front of them, they see themselves. So you see the metaphor of the mirror, the world is like a mirror. Creation is the mirror, he said. See yourself first, and then see the whole world as the self. Now, as a note to this, Shambhala is such a sacred mirror. It magnifies and makes more clear this self-awareness. Otherwise, the world you cannot, because it's not about the world, it's about your soul. How can you see the world as a mirror? Because the mirror is this Puriyashtaka, is not what you perceive, but is that cause of that perception, is the quality of the reflection, that the contract with the provider, the operation of there you make that. And then he continued, Ramana continued, you are not told to shut your eyes to the world, but only to see yourself first, so to purify that vision, and then see the whole world as the self. If you consider yourself as the body, the world appears to be external. If you are the self, the world appears as Brahman manifested. And this Brahman manifested is much, we are helped in see that, no? Because then we'll see how can you say that it's Brahman manifested when there is so much killing and violence in the world. And Shambhala is like a bridge helping us to have a new vision, because it's a vision of the heart. I remember in one of these meditations which I had in a cave, it was not another time when I had this connection with Shambhala. It was like I arrived in a place. It was like a place where I could see everything, but it was not of a perception of like I could see physically, but it was like a, not even a knowledge, a sense of openness, of vastness of knowledge, as a sense of expansion of awareness, like more a sense of a freedom. Later on, meditating on that and connecting with the teachings, I realized that maybe that was that mandala, that Kala Chakra mandala, in which is like being there is like you, or is Shambhala Yantra, like where you can see in a different way. For me, it was just that I could see everything, or I could know from that space. It was like showing me how you enter a space. It was like entering that space, and then from that space you can see, like on the top of a mountain, you can see everything. It was the sensation of a top of a mountain. No, it was, but it was not just that I see vast. It was like, yeah, through a shift of perception, everything would be accessible, and so on. So this sense of infinity that is opening, like a archetypal mirror. Now, very much in connection with what we said, as a natural expansion to that, if you remember, even in the invocation which I read to you, it was said, Kamtrun Rinpoche said, may I be able to emanate forms for the benefit and happiness of all beings without exception. So it's like that emanating power of this. So this is what bodhisattvas are doing, are creating, like radiating this world of beauty, exactly as through the ego we are creating, a world of fear and so on. And with this we can refer to what we can name archetypal creativity. As a spiritual being endowed with the creative power, which is this spanda, the sacred tremor, which in the Sufi tradition, for example, is named Hima. The heart has this radiating power. We as humans reflect Shiva consciousness power, or as Ibn Arabi said, share with God the divine power to create, the power to articulate and give expression to knowledge and consciousness. So even in this, human consciousness, there is a possibility to radiate. And now, referring to this archetypal creativity, we have two different forms of creativity. We have what we may name vital creativity, which is this at the animal level, our natural instincts urge us, and for the most part unconsciously and involuntarily, we enter in this cosmic process of life and death. We procreate, and then we go in psychological tendencies, fears, dislike, jealousy, attachments, like all this world. We create a world, but is more an instinctual creation. It's very much based on an instinctual creation. But we have another option. Ibn Arabi would say, and the tantric teachings would tell us, and it's good to remember this. At the spiritual level, there is a pure spiritual creativity radiating from the heart that prompts us to impress on the cosmos the forms and images of our transfigured imagination. So that trust and that beauty and that aspiration has its own power. And this is the difference. This is when such visions are appearing, because I said that we will clarify how such visions are happening. They are not just coming out of nowhere because, I don't know, somebody is, God wants that person. It's that purity of Purya Ashtaka, of the mirror. And that, radiance, not from outside, but it's a radiance of the Ima, of the spiritual heart, of the Spanda, which is there. So that is the visionary experience, and this is how it can be revealed. Not just wishful imagination. So briefly, what are the conditions of such thing? Just the purity of our mind and soul, of this mirror. When this mirror is purified, then we will have visions of Shambhala. Unless that, only maybe in some very short moments of grace or so, when we raise to a high state of consciousness. But then if the mirror is tainted by ego, we are not present, we are not available. But when that is more and more, when we allow this cosmic mirror to be there, it's much easier. And an example, love. We feel love, and then this love is a creative power, it's a tremendous power. But then we take this tremendous power of love, and then we have reflected it in the mirror of our soul, which means fears, jealousy, prejudices, traumas, expectations, comparisons, and so on. So thus, love becomes reflected, expressed at the personal level through the filters of this Purya Ashtaka. But love can be expressed without such filters, personal filters, and then we are really present for our lover, and then such a presence can be experienced with the whole world. Again, as Ramana said, the infinite mirror of Lamana, seeing only love, hearing only love, touching only love. This is the revelation of self, is bliss. Arunachala, the sacred mountain. He will see Arunachala not as a mountain, but as Shiva. This is the same as is like this for. And now I'm going to give you some examples, some clear examples. But before, just to clarify, we create this Shambhala, and Shambhala offers like a yantra, or it's like a creation which offers a multi-faced mirror of cosmic qualities: peace, love, wisdom, compassion, this word of Bodhisattva qualities. And this mirror, reflects to the soul the panoramic beauty of his own infinite possibility, to become, which is nothing other than his own essential self, which he cannot but love and long for. We see God, and it's this longing of a union in any expression. So I'm going to give you some examples. When in the Islam tradition, it is said, when the Archangel Gabriel, they name it, took the form of Dihya al-Kalbi, an Arab youth known for his extraordinary beauty, the companions of the Prophet, so all who were around the Prophet, saw there a handsome man. Just the Prophet saw the Archangel Gabriel. So he was able to see the Archangel, the Divine, while the others saw just a very mysterious man. They didn't know from where it appeared. They say a man appeared before us whose clothes were exceedingly white and whose hair was exceedingly black. We could see no signs of travel on him, but none of us knew him. Suddenly appeared. They saw just a human. The Prophet saw the archangel. Because, I mean, we can continue, and later, I hope, if there is an interest, we can continue to have more satsangs about Shambhala. There are many, many other aspects to be shared. And then I will give you many examples, some few examples from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, where again the previous Dalai Lama saw Jetson Kappa, while the others saw just a common Buddhist, common monk there. But now I wanted to share with you a beautiful story about Ma Anandamayi. Ma Anandamayi, maybe you or many of you heard about this great saint of India, which was described by Swami Shivananda, the great Swami Shivananda, the most perfect flower the Indian soil has produced. Again, this is Puryashtaka. This is how Swami Shivananda saw it, the most perfect flower. It's a metaphor, it's a poetic image, but is more than this. It's a purity of the soul that can see in this way. Yes? And at the ultimate level, I mean, she perceived herself beyond this physical body. She, in the autobiography of a yogi, in Yogananda, writes, he named it the Bengali joy-permeated mother, and she said to him, "Father, there is little to tell," when he asked from her to speak. And he said, "My consciousness has never associated itself with this temporary body. Before I came on this earth, Father, I was the same. As a little girl, I was the same. I grew into womanhood, but still, I was the same. When the family in which I had been born made arrangement to have this body married, I was the same. And Father, in front of you now, I am the same. Ever afterward, through the dance of creation change around me in the whole of eternity, I shall be the same." And now I'm going to share with you a beautiful recording of Ma Anandamayi identifying herself as Shiva. So as Shiva, she as a woman, visualizing herself and radiating this creative power as Shiva. Ramakrishna did as Kali, Manandamayi, and as many other. Manandamayi, a woman radiating the Shambhogakaya of Shiva. And this is a very special recording because it's a unique, and please, it's worth to look again and again and to meditate on the beauty of this. So, what we see in such a, manifestation. There are many ways in which we can see. We can look at her and we may see, an old lady, just the cynical view of the Westerners, and maybe making jokes about the ways in which Indians have this naive way of expressing Shiva. This is, we consider ourselves superior or so. Or it can be wonderment regarding her personality. Maybe you observed this. It was like she was dead. So no personal radiance. It's worth to come again and again and look, because it's like a rare jewel of absolute transparency. To learn, this is transmission. No? What means no personality? And you look there, just no personality. And with this comes bhakti, adoration. This is another way to refer. But then there is another way. It can be our temporary dissolution of personality. In yoga, this would be Hridaya. With the heart, you become. It's dvani, this transmission. You become without personality. You die. In that is not just wonderment and admiration, oh, this is really special, but you drop anything there. Or even deeper, you can see Shiva. You can see Shiva there. Not just an absence of personality, but you see the divine. Not necessarily, the Shiva represented with the Ganga, or you see beyond the dissolution of personality. You see the eternal moment. You see the sacredness. So this is another way of seeing. Or another way is to become Shiva. So this is what I wanted to share regarding this creative power and how Shambhala can be such a creative power that changes the way in which we are seeing the world, and how this living with, yes, in my heart constantly bodhisattvas are praying for the benefit of all human beings. And this world is reflecting all that. Now, I would, like I said, that I will conclude with a story, a confession, a legend about the king of the world. The Tibetan tradition says that Shambhala is the living source of the highest initiations, and the most important feature of Shambhala is the king, which embodies the innermost consciousness, the pure energy of awareness. And on the spiritual level, it corresponds with that central deity and Kala Chakra, which is Shiva, which is the spiritual heart. And according to a Tibetan prayer for rebirth in Shambhala, each year at the new moons of the black month, so basically the Mahashivaratri, the great king, who has the power of accomplishment, so to give realization, manifests the body of the all-pervading Lord, the glorious teacher, the Kala Chakra himself. So the king of the world, the king of Shambhala, becomes Shiva, manifests as Shiva. So that's why I said it's not just a reflection, he is the subject, he is the consciousness, Shambhala, as well. And with initiations, he ripens the consciousness of all the aspirants who are available, who are ready for that. So the king of the world, the great almighty guru, he rules over the subtle realms to which our mystical spiritual experiences will eventually lead us. He is both external and internal, and corresponds to a deeply human and cosmic reality. So the king of Shambhala lives at the same time in his kingdom of Shambhala, but is also in the heart of every living being. So symbolizes this radiance of the Supreme Self. It's not just that transcendental, or that would be the Dharmakaya, no, just the light. But then as a manifestation, no, Shambhogakaya is this deity which is in the throne, this I feeling in the throne of the heart, that perfect king of my heart. Yes? It is considered a great recipient of eternal light. What is? Just the heart. And also the son of the sun sometimes is also called. Now we have a representation of the king of the world in the paintings of Nicholas Roerich. But now I will refer to Confession of Ferdinand of Ossendowski. This is particularly interesting because this man didn't have a spiritual background. This man was just a very renowned writer and also officer in the army, and he traveled. Basically, he had an education. He was born in Poland. He has Tartarian roots, his family. He then moved in with his family, and he received education mostly in Russia. But then, through different jobs, he traveled all around the Russian imperium, in Mongolia as well. And it was exactly that time of the Russian Revolution, the Red Revolution. So when the communists basically came the power, and it was still the fight between the whites and the reds, the communists and the armies of the whites. He was awarded writer, so he was very much appreciated for his writing. He wrote a book, many books, Beasts, Men, and Gods, speaking about how in all that period he was threatened by beasts, by men, and how he was saved by the grace of God, referring to Bodhisattva, actually a tulku, he named it living Buddha. In that time, even the terminology is not, he would say Goro. Goro, it means guru, and so on in the text which appeared in 1922, this book. But he writes as a traveler, as a gifted person who has, artistic gifts, but not as a spiritual person, not as somebody who. So these are different covers. Maybe if we'll have time, other satsangs will speak about this man who was leading the opposition against the Red Russians. It was so-called the Bloody Baron, which that considered himself the incarnation of the mountain, high mountain in Mongolia, and the spirit of the war there, and he was a protector of Shambhala. He considered himself like this, but there were some deviation, basic, definitely. And we have here the map where he was traveling in Tibet, in Mongolia, outer Mongolia, Russia. So all these travels which this man had, that period, he was condemned to death. He was released after that. Then he wrote a book about Lenin, Lenin, the God of the Godless. For this, he was banished in Poland. So after that, in 1945, so much later, when the Russians enter in Poland, they unburied his tomb to be sure that he is dead. No? And he was declared the enemy, and his books were not published in Poland till after the fall of the communist regime. So he was this kind of person, not spiritual oriented, but was fascinated, and he was describing what was happening there. Today, just a brief, it happened something to him, and then he got some explanations of what happened. This happened while he was crossing the Tsagan-Luki plain with a caravan. Stop, stop, whispered my old Mongol guide as we were one day crossing the plain near Tsagan-Luk. Stop. He slipped from his camel, which lay down without his command. The Mongol raised his hands in prayer before his face and began to repeat the sacred phrase, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. The other Mongols immediately stopped their camels and began to pray. Om Mani Padme Hum. What has happened? I thought. As I gazed round over the tender green grass, up to the cloudless sky, and out toward the dreamy soft rays of the evening sun. The Mongols prayed for some time, whispered among themselves, and after tightening up the packs on the camels, moved on. Did you see? Asked the Mongol. How our camels moved their ears in fear. How the herd of horses on the plain stood fixed in attention, and how the herds of sheep and cattle lay crouched close to the ground. Did you notice that the birds did not fly, the marmots did not run, and the dogs did not bark? The air trembled softly, and borne from afar the music of a song which permeated to the hearts of men, animals, and birds alike. Earth and sky ceased breathing. The wind did not blow, and the sun did not move. At such a moment, the wolf that is stealing up on the sheep arrests his stealthy growl. The frightened herd of antelopes suddenly checks its wild course. The knife of the shepherd cutting the sheep's throat falls from his hand. The rapacious ermit ceases to harass the unexpected saiga, antelope. All living beings in fear, wonderment, are involuntarily thrown into prayer and waiting for their fate. So it was just now. Thus, it has always been whenever the king of the world, in his hidden palace, prays and searches out the destiny of all people on the earth. In this wise, the old Mongol, a simple coarse shepherd and hunter, spoke to me. On my journey to Central Asia, I came to know for the first time about the mystery of mysteries, which I can call by no other name, the mystery of mystery. And in connection with this is the story of Agartha. There are of this underneath world of the people who arrive there. And later on, he came to a monastery where the living Buddha, he said, that Tulku was there in Mongolia, a great master who was appreciated everywhere in Tibet as well, in China, gave him a ring which allowed him to enter all the monasteries, and then he had dialogues with all these lamas, including this Tulku, about the king of the world and about Shambhala. It's quite late, and I would rather invite you to do a short meditation on Shambhala Yantra. But definitely, I feel that we should continue since the Christmas is coming, and we will see, we'll decide when the new Shambhala satsangs will continue. Of course, if there is also the aspiration to continue to speak about all this. Before doing meditation, are there any questions?
Or two from one person.
Yes.
How should we do it so that everyone hears the question?
I can repeat if it's short. You want to? Yes, yes. Come.
In your book about Shambhala, there's related a visit of few men asking for help in the world few centuries ago. Once they arrive at Shambhala gate, one of the celestial beings tells the men to wait as the greatest wars in the world haven't yet been produced. We find the same advice in the Apocalypse, where the martyrs receive each one white shirt and are told to wait because their number is not yet complete. Postponing help doesn't contradict a bodhisattva's attitude.
No, such statements should be seen as more metaphorical aspects related. It's not about postponing help. It's rather that the actualization of some transformations will happen according to more general karma, but it's our duty to send constantly light and thoughts of love and compassion in the world. So such statements will never mean to not express this purity of intention. It's just that maybe in connection with some circumstances, either some people are not yet ready to access and to manifest, to express that, or that simply it's that not yet that, or referring to that shift. Yes, it will be different. But again, this is something that can and should be done every moment, this self-actualization. And again, it's in our heart, it's in us. That, yes.
The other one is, how can we integrate Shambhala in our daily practice?
So the question is, how can we integrate Shambhala in our daily practice? Well, very simple. Meditating on Shambhala Yantra and evoking the grace of Shambhala. And then, as I said, all these divine qualities, all that for us represents purity or these divine qualities, no? Purity, longing, spiritual aspiration, truthfulness, the aspiration to help others, the wisdom, all these are like materialized in this Shambhala realm, which is not, so it's not like thinking that there is a realm like this, but feeling and becoming a part of it and eventually becoming it. So this is the way in which is like constantly, is like you would think you don't have just your common thoughts, but I need to do this, but I have my problem. Shambhala is always with you. If you start, and this is not impossible and it's not hard to do, it's with this longing, it's just like an intimate, like with your lover. With your lover, you think all the time, no? And somehow when you are in love, it's your lover all the time there. Bring this thought of Shambhala, and all that aspiration is not just a thought, all that, no, in this. And then it may come that some visions may appear, and then, yes, when such a clear representation of an angel or of a presence of an old man or a bodhisattva comes, then you can evoke that as a guide or as an inspiration, still not really outside of you. And this is the way in which we live with this sacred dimension of Shambhala, which, as I said, purifies our heart in a subtle way. No? Exactly as in an unconscious way we poison ourselves when we sabotage ourselves and we struggle with so many things and we maintain that vision. It's the vision, the materialistic vision, which supports this ignorance and keeps us in that. Now we open to a different vision, and it's like letting that act, even, I would say, even in a not unconscious, but it's better said, and this image is very beautiful, this natural liberation. So it's natural. It's not natural to be in struggle and pain and just nourish something that is natural. This Shambhala word, a word of bodhisattvas, a word of uplifting spiritual aspirations, which will take away, no? Exactly as I said that this can be done, no? It's more about taking away, and taking away these limitations can happen by evoking Shambhala and letting Shambhala purify. It's like, it's like you would say a secret candle shines in my heart. Bodhisattvas, a word of purity, a word of joy, and a word of hope is shining in my heart. And that is purifying. That is purifying. I fall asleep with it, I stay with it. No? Who am I? So, yes.
Can you recommend a Shambhala? Maybe to repeat also the question.
If I can recommend a Shambhala book, very inspiring, this Thomas Andrew, Shambhala Oasis of Light. this book of Ossendowski, which has just some parts about the king of the world. We will refer to Nicolas Roerich, which also la mission de the mission of India, Saint Just d'Alvedre, Dalvedre, Dalvedre. And then the mystifying Shambhala of this Kamtrul Rinpoche. And yes, I think that are books you can find inspiration. There is another, The Path to Shambhala of another. There are other, of course, there are many kind of imagination novels which are not really based on an authentic source, and then is not coming from that purity of the soul. It may be beautiful imagination, but it's not that transparency. It's just that you may want to make a successful story, which having such a topic can become easily. But it's more about this spirit of Shambhala, which is essential, the authenticity. And of course, René Guénon, the king of the world, le roi du monde, the king of the world, is basically, he makes commentaries on this Ossendowski, what Ossendowski said, and Saint Yves d'Alvedre, and then he develops more that archetypal vision about Shambhala and about the king of the world, this principle of the spirit of the heart, of the spiritual heart. We will refer to all this, hopefully. Yes. Yes.
Is there any Bija mantra recommended for practicing together with Shambhala yantra? Maybe that hope.
We can meditate for them. I will contemplate. Yes, there is a way. There is a long mantra which is practiced in Kala Chakra, but there is also a Bija, a seed mantra of Kala Chakra, and again, I just see how this inspiration comes, how even this about the king of the world, it was like, this is now the time to say this. So I will feel if this mantra is, till then, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, and in that is already we have we can refer to the last syllable as a very strong mantra related to Shambhala. Yes. Om Mani Padme Hum. Yes. If there are no other questions, let's. Yes.
Is Shambhala a sacred center on Earth exclusively, or is Shambhala existing also for other planets and planes in the entire cosmos?
It is the very expression of this principle of compassion that manifests everywhere, but Shambhala or Agartha, as we'll see, refers to this planet, And also there are, even speaking about the physical places, there are like projections of this on different places. When karma allows and when people are open, then such a place is possible in some areas, not necessarily related to the Buddhist tradition, but there were oases of spirituality, of authentic spirituality over the world. But for example, with the invasion of the Tibet, the spiritual centers and the oasis that was there was definitely much more limited, no? But this light is still moving, exactly as we see in the history of humanity how civilizations moved from, let's say, China, Egypt, and so on, ancient Greece. So the center of consciousness can move in different places. The same is also with such places, and I will refer to such places as reflections of Shambhala and legends which appear even in the there is a very beautiful Chinese poem about this land, about somebody who entered a land where it was just freedom and happiness, and this it's a medieval poem which also reflects such a world. So yes, Shambhala refers mostly to the earth, while compassion definitely manifests in different other everywhere in the universe. So let's conclude with a short meditation on Shambhala Yantra, longing for this union with the realm of Shambhala, a purification of Puriyashtaka. Keep your back straight. You can first close the eyes, focus in the heart. The longing of union with the realm of Shambhala. And we gently open the eyes, like looking with the heart through the eyes. First, mostly in the center of a yantra, for increasing the capacity to focus, the stability of the mind. and then the expansion. Feeling the yantra life reflected in our heart. All this longing for purity, wisdom, compassion, invoking the help of the bodhisattvas. Now gently close the eyes, trying to keep the image of Shambhala Yantra sending compassion to the whole world, aspiration for more light for Mother Earth, for all sentient beings. Perfect purity of intention, the purity of our heart. Keeping this sense of purity, keeping in our heart the aliveness of Shambhala. We conclude our meditation now. With this, we conclude our satsang. Blessings.